I don't know how big the fish was that swallowed Jonah. It had to be big. I don't know how God sent a big fish to swallow Jonah, but I know how Jonah felt once he was inside the fish. I know about darkness. I know about big prayers. My family had been through a lot in our history. We've been swallowed up by many big fish, flat on our face in prayer, then spit out into dry land. I met Don when I was 16, and he went to prison for a long time. We wrote to each other occasionally, and then I stopped writing to him, and then I got involved with another guy, and I got pregnant. And I wrote to Don and told him to forget about me because it wasn't going to work, and he said he didn't care, that he still loved me and wanted me to be his wife. And in the meantime, we had all these 4 kids without ever being married. And then when Don was drinking and all this and that, I didn't want to marry him, but I had these 4 kids. So when he went to prison in '64, when our last son was born, Raymond, he went to prison, and he was facing a lot of time. And I was glad that he was facing a lot of time. And Judge Hughes allowed Don to get out of prison, and then we got married. And so that's how our lives were. Sometimes you just want to dig a hole and fall in and cover it up and say, forget it. If it wasn't for the cross and the empty grave, life would have no meaning. I felt like I was just drowning or in confusion all the time. Not understanding why that when I was praying, I wasn't seeing anything happen. And praying a lot and crying a lot, I just proceeded to try to fix it myself. Sometimes I always felt that if I would just do the right thing, things would change, especially in my relationship with Don. Before he got sober and got off of drugs and all that, it's like he just wasn't there. I was there with all the kids, but he wasn't there. I mean, he was there in body. And so I was always trying to keep things going, paying the bills, feeding the kids, doing all that kind of stuff that mothers do, protecting the kids. I hated that because I grew up that way. My dad was a very controlling, dominating personality over my mom. And when I seen that, I always said that I would not live that way. I just wouldn't. I used to tell my grandmother, I'll never marry a man that smokes and drinks, and it's exactly what I did. I was always in church, even at a young age with my grandmother. My parents never went to church, it was my grandmother. When I was 22, I came to Fort Wayne. That's when I first realized that I was a sinner and I gave my life to Jesus. I was very rebellious. I was bitter and I was angry. He gave me a vision. Everything that I was trying to do to fix Don and myself, I was doing it in the flesh. I had to die to self, but I didn't know how. But that was in the 80s, and it took me another 20-some years before that dream, that vision came to where I could see it, and that's when I got into mending nets. I could look back and see that I wasn't forsaken and that God did love me. Because I used to wonder, am I a Christian? Am I really born again? If I am, why do I have to keep going through this? Why doesn't the pain go away? Why doesn't it stop? What have I done, to make all this happen? Why can't I fix it? And at that time when I was going through all that, I didn't understand it. I do today. I understand that God had to break me. And so then I started praying, and I said, Father, you have to really help me here, because if something doesn't change with me, I don't know what I'll do, you know. So I asked him to start changing me, my attitude, my bitterness, and my anger. And that's when I got into freedom in Christ. And then I really acknowledged how sinful my nature was and how I kept living this teeter-totter life that wasn't pleasing to God. And as I began to see God work in our lives, even though life was happening, it was different. We weren't living in a lot of chaos and conflict. We knew for sure that God was real, that He was there. We got into the Word together. We got to praying together, doing our devotionals in the morning. And things just started happening. We started changing, and our lives began to grow and change. God doesn't answer our prayers right away when we're going through something. We just don't get all the answers. You know, we have to go through that valley of tears. We have to get into the Word. And God has to break that in us that's not like Him, because that's His whole motive, you know. I want you to be like me, Lucy, or whatever, you know. We're pilgrims. We're just passing through. This is not our life. We have to live like we're over there, living down here.